Let's get in Mayuresh Joshi to help us analyze the numbers in greater detail. Mayuresh, looks like a blowout set when it comes to Dr. Reddy's consolidated profit at 722 crores.
Evening, Aman. Yes, I think it has surpassed expectations on the bottom line. The top line more or less in line with expectations. We were expecting 11.5% growth, close to that 4,000 ad mark. But again, I think the EBITDA margins have been a clear beat. So at 28.5%, I think it's way ahead of what we are estimating at 25%. But the bottom line, again, I think you would probably like to see for some one-offs, considering a strong EBITDA performance. It is possible that the bottom line has grown, but I think the other income element is also something to be watched out for.
Mayuresh, looks like even from an operational view, it's been a pretty stellar set. In terms of the EBITDA, it's come in at 1,140 crore rupees. That surpasses our expectations of 950 crores, and the margins have come in at a steady 28.5%. Do you think that Dr. Reddy's is on course to deliver these kind of margins even in the following quarters, or do you believe that this is perhaps just a one-off?
No, clearly, I think one really needs to understand from the management that this is a one-off, because the street and we were expecting margins of close to 24-25% within that range itself. So I think a better business mix was something that would have aided Dr. Reddy's both in terms of the top line and the operating performance. But the margins that they've posted currently are way above expectations. So yes, I think it's a clear operational beat on the margin front. And clearly, I think whether this margin sustenance will stay, I think one really needs to understand how the product launches for Dr. Reddy's are going to pan out. So Nexium, a part of the Nexium sales would have come through in this quarter. A substantial part would come in quarter 3. But again, what probably happens with a slew of launches that are expected from Dr. Reddy's over the next few quarters would be keen their earnings drive.
Oh, yes, indeed. And by the way, some interesting trivia. This is the first time that the sales have crossed the mark of 700, and fairly convincingly at that, at 722 crore rupees. Mayuresh, would you attribute this kind of a solid number, majorly to the fact that it's been strong for the US growth markets? Because by and large, there might have been problems with some of the other markets, such as Russia, on account of the way the currency has behaved, etc. And, do you think that this follow-through traction in the US markets is likely to continue?
The US sales were expected to be strong. They have been strong for Dr. Reddy's over the past few quarters. And yes, I think, as I was mentioning earlier, I think the commentary related to a slew of launches that Dr. Reddy's is expected to come with over the next few quarters would drive their US generic business in a more holistic and meaningful manner. Having said that, I think the Russian and the CIS markets were expected to show degrowth, more or less with account of the ruble depreciation that we've probably witnessed. But again, I think the Indian growth story would also be something to be watched out for. And what happens with the PSAI segment, I think that is equally important for Dr. Reddy's consolidated numbers to show an increasing secular trend.
Okay, so looks like it's been a pretty decent quarter for Dr. Reddy's. In fact, the stock is going to be on fire perhaps tomorrow in tomorrow's session. Let's just walk you through what they've delivered. It's been a stellar 722 crore rupees in terms of the profits, and that has steadily beat the ET Now expectations. In fact, let's get in Darshan, who joins in with all the number crunching. And Darshan, from the looks of it, it's a pretty solid set of numbers for Dr. Reddy's.
Well, it's an extremely strong number. If you're looking at the top line, almost 4,000 crores. It's the first time, that they've come out with such a high number. First time they've come very close to the 4,000 number. The profit, the first time they've crossed profits over 700 crores. So this is the first time for everything on Dr. Reddy's. Another strong quarter for Dr. Reddy's this time around. Margins have come in extremely high. The EBITDA number has come in at 1,140 crores compared to our estimate of 950 crores. That means the EBITDA margin is at 28.5%. Obviously, Nexium will definitely have booked here. That is why this high margin would have come in. But even despite that, margins will come in. Even if you remove Nexium, margins on a core basis, we'll have to find out from the management, is still much higher than what the street is probably anticipating. The global generic market, that did extremely well for the company, a growth of 15% that came in. PSAI is a little worrisome, that was down 7%. But overall, if you're looking at it, the US markets grew 32%. Obviously, there is Nexium that will be booked here. here because they didn't have any other launch here. So that would be the only explanation. Apart from it, the European markets were up 65%. The currency also playing in their favor. Indian markets were rather strong when Lupin disappointed by 9%. Dr. Reddy's has grown a strong 14% as far as the Indian market is concerned. UCB will be included here. The emerging markets, because of the currency that is there, they have exposure to Russia, they have exposure to some Latin American companies. That is down 22%. That is on a currency basis. Probably on a constant currency they may have grown, but the market, what GV Prasad, who's heading the company, he has said that the growth was led by new products. That's the quote we are getting from him. So in most cases he is referring to Nexium generic that was launched. Overall, a second quarter of extremely strong numbers coming in from Dr. Reddy's.
Oh yes, indeed, it has been a solid set of numbers. Let's also get in Nimish Mehta, founder director at Delta Advisors. Thanks very much, Nimish, for joining in. And I just wanted to get in your views. It's been a pretty astounding set of numbers for Dr. Reddy's on pretty much all parameters. It gets an A+. The sales have crossed the 700 mark for the first time ever at 722 crore rupees. What is your view?
Yeah, sure. I think the numbers have been very strong, and it probably partly would have been also because of the Nexium launch that we have seen. But regardless, I think the growth has to be there. I mean, beyond expectations, almost across segments. Importantly, the EBITDA margin, even probably without Nexium, intuitively looks to be a fairly strong number, which means some of the concerns related to the currency are kind of, I won't say completely behind, but have been mitigated to some extent. And so that's a great thing. I just hope that the growth in Venezuela would not have kind of driven these numbers. If that is the case, then, I think we are looking at a very strong quarter, obviously.
And I'm just going to read out to you from the press release what GV Prasad has to say. He's talking about how there has been robust growth across the markets in the US, India as well as Europe. That has been supported by the new products that were launched in the last 1 year, as well as their investment in research and development, or R&D, that remains at 11%, and they will continue their strategy of building an exciting pipeline of assets across their business. And Nimish, clearly some very positive commentary coming about. Do you think that Dr. Reddy's is on course to even beat some of the targets that it's already charted out for the company in terms of the top line as well as margin growth?
Yeah, we do expect it because we are expecting a fair bit of, heavyweight launches in the coming quarters. So, after the Nexium launch has happened, I think most of the issues related to the facility have been addressed, if not directly by resolution, but by shifting products to some other facility. And the kind of built up in terms of their US pipeline makes me feel that we are likely to see a robust, launch quarter ahead of us from now.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the stock price as well. In fact, Dr. Reddy's ended close to the day's high at 4,214. Mayuresh, brace ourselves for a stellar gap up opening for Dr. Reddy's come tomorrow, and what targets are you advising?
So clearly, Avani, yes, I think a gap up is expected on Dr. Reddy's tomorrow. And again, I think, taking back to the point, I think the US A&D pipeline also looks extremely strong. A couple of new launches expected, Bakugen expected to come through in the next few quarters, Vidaza expected to come through. So yes, I think a strong gap up expected on Dr. Reddy's. But clearly, I think we will be hearing management commentary and we will be revising our estimates going forward.
And Nimish, do you share the same view that it's looking strong for Dr. Reddy's in the long term?
Absolutely. We are actually banking a lot on the pipeline of Dr. Reddy's that they have created. And we see some visibility around, few products to be launched over the next few quarters. And those are all likely to be high-value products. So from that perspective, we remain very excited. And given that this quarter did not have any meaningful launch other than Nexium, and probably it has also grown X of Nexium, that means that the base also is very strong, and we can just see in addition to the base at a very healthy level.
Okay, since we have both of you with us, we also have another pharma major's numbers that have come out, not as big, but Glenmark as well. And it's put out its profit almost in line with what we were expecting at 198 crore rupees. This is versus a comparable of 165 crores. That's the only number that we have with us at hand. Mayuresh, a quick call on Glenmark and, what the verdict is on this number?
So clearly, I think even for Glenmark, the generic segment is expected to grow quite decently, in excess of 15-16% on a year-on-year basis. And this would be backed by US sales for Glenmark. The India branded business also is expected to do well. So if you go by the past quarter's numbers, the India business is extremely well. I think what was the turning point rather for Glenmark would be the US sales growing at 18-20% over the next 2 quarters. So in all likelihood, looking at the bottom line, I think the top line, which was expected to come through around 1850 odd crores, should be around that mark, which means that the US business would have grown by 15-16%.
Okay, thank you so much for joining in, both Nimish as well as Mayuresh, for assessing the numbers of Glenmark as well as Dr. Reddy's with us. Thumbs up for Dr. Reddy's. Glenmark has put out a sales figure of 1895 crores and margins have come in at 21.7%, so it's been a bit good quarter for them as well. But moving right on to more numbers, IFCI's PAT came in at 183 crore rupees.